Hey there, I'm Angela. Welcome to the channel or welcome back. And today I have a little bit of a garden tour to share with you guys. So let's go take a look. If you can tell that the ground is wet, we have had quite a bit of rain lately, which was desperately needed. And there's probably been a lot of changes since the last time that I had you guys out here. And I'm going to show you what's changed, and it may be something I covered in the previous garden tour, but I'll just go ahead and tell it anyway. So in my onion bed here, you can see I've pulled out all the onions and I have reseeded with a couple of types of kale, and the rest of the bed along the front and then the back side are winter squash. So my fingers are crossed and hopeful that I'm going to get some winter squash. And you can already see the seedlings are doing pretty well. These are some of the new seeds that I got from Annie's Heirloom Seeds. So I'm excited to try those out. In my grow bags here, I've got leeks. I don't think they're ready yet. And my ground cherry plant. If you guys have never grown ground cherries, I'd suggest that you give it a try. One plant may be all you need because they produce like crazy. Unless you really just love ground cherries, or if you have a big family, you might want to grow a couple of plants. And the other two grow bags here, I have a wildflower mix from Annie's and some zinnias. I haven't had real good luck with my flowers this year. Like, I sowed those zinnia seeds a while back, and then some I sowed way earlier than that, which I'll show you when we get there, and I still don't have any flowers, and they just haven't grown like crazy. In the second bed where my garlic was, I reseeded with beets and radishes, which are coming up. I've got beets along this front row here, and then in the back I've got radishes coming up over there, and that variety that's done really well is called Champion. And then I've got a few leeks still remaining in there that I just kind of stuck in a little while back. And then I've got more radishes over here in the corner. And in my buckets here, which these are probably, I guess, 3-gallon pots. These are mostly herbs and flowers that I have growing in all of these, you know, all throughout my garden. I've got my cabbage bed, which the cabbage plants are doing really well, but the heads are very slow to form. So I just keep tending them and hoping that one day they will fully mature. And I have actually harvested a few of the cabbages that were in here. They were more of, what was it called? Toscana. And they kind of looked like the lacinato kale. So I don't know if those are the same thing or not, but I did harvest those and used them in smoothies. It was really good. And since I had so many seedlings of the winter squash, I divided them and put a few of those in here just to see how they would do. You can kind of see the seedlings there. And in my fourth bed here with the trellis, this poor bed has taken a beating from the deer this summer, and it is my sincerest goal to finally get a fence up maybe next year. So what they are going for are the melon plants that I have along here, and on the back side I've got cucumbers. This is just a tomato seedling that was growing in with another tomato plant, and they were crowding each other, so I pulled that one out and just stuck it here in an empty spot, hoping it would turn into something. But back here I only have my one cucumber plant that I bought as a seedling already from Home Depot, and it's done well. I've pulled cucumbers off of that. But the other seedlings that I've started along here, they might get about 4, 5, 6 inches high, and then the deer just chomp them down. And I got a new camera device, and I'm still learning how to do, you know, the angling and everything. Thanks for bearing with me. We have a lot of woods right there that my garden kind of butts up to. So we get a lot of deer. And then I've got a nice tomato plant in this bucket. And then I had a bunch of watermelon and pumpkin seedlings that I originally had seeded, which I'll show you here in a minute, but they were kind of overcrowding each other, and I knew I had to thin them out anyway, so I went ahead and pulled out the extras, and where I had pulled old spent tomato plants out, or ones that were failing, I went ahead and put the pumpkins and watermelons in these grow bags, because most of these grow bags have these nice cages here, which the pumpkins and watermelons will love. So let us turn and go back up the other side. If you are wondering what these red cloths are, these are old cloth napkins that we used to use for many years. We probably have about 12 or so of those, and I've since replaced them with some nicer ones. So what I'm using these for is to spray repellent on, called, I think it's Repels All or something like that, and hang it where I've got some nice fruit going on. And I also tried using one of these netting bags on a couple of the tomatoes just as a test to see how they would do. I think that this Repels All is doing a pretty good job with, you know, keeping the animals at least out of the immediate area that they're on. Let's see, so what we got here? Over here, this is all flowers. I've got a feathery morning glory, some zinnias. That is sage that didn't make it. I think the heat just got to it, and it looks like it's pretty all but dead. And some nasturtiums there. And that in the far bucket is a Nicotiana. But those did really well last year, and those are even being slow to flower. I do have one that is flowering, which I will show you. And if you guys have never grown Nicotiana, you might consider it. It usually, this variety that I have, while it's only 2 or 3 feet tall now, last year they got about 6 feet tall, and the flowers were very prolific. I'll show you what. They're beautiful flowers, and they bloom in the evening, and they have the best fragrance. It is just lovely. If you haven't grown those yet and you give it a try, I think you're going to be in for like a real treat. And in the 5th bed here, let's see, I've got in this bucket calendula, which that flower, that's been doing pretty well. That's been my best flower so far. And my beans, because they took such a beating last year from deer, I grew them under this netting, which has been fine for protecting the parts that are under there. But you can see along the top here, they'll make a little bit of a recovery and grow some new foliage, and then the deer are right back at it again. So not much to be done about that right now. And I did have a couple of squash at the end of this bed. It was not getting enough sun down here, and it just failed, so I pulled it out. And I might grow some kale or something there because it doesn't need quite as much sun. And I've got some cosmos right there. Those are growing, but they haven't even like tried to flower yet. It's okay. And the front side of this bed are peppers. The peppers have done pretty well, and I've been harvesting from them pretty regularly. Almost every day there's peppers that are ready. I've got banana peppers, some sweet bell types, and then some more of a hot types. This one here with the purple peppers, that one's called Aurora. This is my first year growing that, and it's really lovely. Get you guys in as close as I can, but the peppers are a bright purple, so pretty. And as usual, my hot peppers are doing much better than my sweet peppers. That just seems to be par for the course with me, at least. I don't know how other gardeners do, but bell peppers seem to be a little bit harder to grow. Down here I have an eggplant that is kind of making a comeback. another ground cherry. And this is something that just popped up, and it looks like, kind of looks like a tomato plant. So I'm just letting it go to see what happens with it. I relocated a sunflower over here, and we will see how that does. It does have a flower bud on it. And I have a squash here. This one's called Sunstripe. No flowers yet, so no fruits, but I'm hoping that it does pretty well. But we'll see. It's over here on the shadier side of the garden. And then same like with the other bed that we just looked at, beans along the back under the netting and peppers along the front. And in this set of grow bags here, I left a couple of tomato plants. I know the camera's all over the place. I apologize. I'm getting used to this tracking feature and learning how to work that. I did leave 2 tomato plants over here just to see how they would do. They're not getting as much sun as they probably should, but we'll see. And in this set of grow bags here, this is mostly peppers here that I didn't have room for in the bed, so I just kept them in the grow bags. But I did want to show you guys. So these are doing pretty good here. And a couple of things I wanted to show you guys. So this one here is a tall pepper. It's a Tabasco. It's probably about 3 feet high, but I love the growth habit of these peppers. You can see, and it took a while for this to really sprout any peppers or flowers, but now that it has, I'm sorry about this. Now that it has, it's kind of going gangbusters. There's all kinds of peppers on there. So I'm pretty excited about that. And interestingly, this pepper here is called Dragon's Toe. It's a hot pepper, but I thought those were really cool looking. They're very wrinkly, and I think that they are going to pretty much be a red pepper when they reach maturity. Got a shishito plant here that the poor plant, it really took a beating, and I feel like the plant hasn't really thrived, but it has produced a few peppers, so that's been pretty good. Go ahead and take that one off. And I did make some hot sauce yesterday with a bunch of my hot peppers. It turned out pretty good, better than the batch I made last year. I used a different recipe. And then got dill, germander, lemon balm, which is lovely. This is a flower here. It's a 4 o'clock. It hasn't actually flowered yet, but that's what it's going to be. And this is another instance of, I've restarted cucumbers 3 or 4 times because of the deer, and I thought it would be more protected here, but sure enough, they found it and they left everything else around it alone, but they ate all 3 seedlings that were in that, so it was disappointing. And skipping on over to the newer side, in the 7th raised bed, I've got by far tomatoes and peppers, and I do have some marigolds growing up here that I planted as companion plants, but they haven't flowered yet. And last year, I remember them taking a really long time to flower too, but the plants themselves look pretty good. But the tomatoes in this bed have done really well, and so have the peppers, by and large, compared to some of the other tomato plants that I have around here and there, and I've been harvesting them. Something has affected a few of my tomato plants pretty greatly, and while I've gotten a few fruits off of those plants, they haven't really thrived. So after I let the remaining fruits on there kind of mature just a little bit or start to turn, I'll go ahead and just pull them and then take the whole plant out. But what I do want to show you is these are the pumpkins and watermelons that I planted up along this trellis that I put in place so that I could grow them vertically, and they're doing really, really well. I've kind of got this blocked off by one of my cages here that I wasn't using, just to keep the deer from accessing this aisleway, so I can't get in there easily right now. But you can see some of the pumpkins are all the way up past the top of this trellis, and I'm wondering how well if this is gonna do very well to support the plants. But we'll have to see. It's something new that I'm trying. So corn, it's an issue with the corn. I'll come back to that in just a minute. It's always something. And then along the other side of this trellis, I have some of my straggler tomato plants that I went ahead and put into grow bags and just kind of stuck up here and tied them to the trellis for support. And I had so many extra pumpkin and watermelon seedlings that I was sticking the little seedlings everywhere. So in these grow bags here, that's what I did there. And I think that those were tomato plants originally. And the star of the show this year in the garden as far as tomatoes are these two grow bags here. This first one is a honey drop lemon. It's a cherry tomato, or maybe it's just honey drop. I grew it last year and it did really well. It does have cherry tomatoes, and they do get a little bit bigger than the other cherry tomatoes that I've grown. Like, they are much bigger than the Matt's wild cherry I've grown, and they turn yellow when they're ripened. And then the second grow bag here is also a cherry tomato. This one's called Sundrop. It's my first year growing this, and it has done very, very well. I've been pulling cherries off of this almost every day, and it keeps on producing. I'm going to step back, maybe you guys can see it a little bit better. And then towards the back, and this grow bag here, I ended up pulling a tomato plant out of there that was failing and put some daisy seeds in. And this tomato plant here, I'm sorry I'm not telling you guys the names of all this. We could be here for a long time. This is a Cherokee Purple, and it's done pretty well. It has borne fruit up until lately, and then it's gotten wilty. So I don't know if I just didn't keep it watered enough while we were having such hot weather. Either way, it hasn't been a stellar tomato year, but other things have made up for it. And I'm really excited to see what comes about with all of my pumpkins and watermelons. I had so many extra seedlings. I keep talking about that, but I thought, I'm going to succession sow, and if we have like a long season, they could have a shot. So I went ahead and have transplanted all those little seedlings anywhere and everywhere that I had a spot, just to see how they would do and hope there's enough time in the season. That's another little winter squash seedling that I had extra of. And that is pretty much it over here. I can take you guys over to the greenhouse and kind of show you what's going on with the corn. So I've pulled 3 of my grow bags of corn out of the greenhouse. This one, and then the 2 over there at the end of my little trellis row. And the reason why, so they were doing okay. All the corn was doing pretty good in the greenhouse. And then a few days ago, I noticed that those 3 grow bags, the stalks had just completely fallen over, almost like a deer tramped through them and knocked them to the ground. Of course, a deer was not in the greenhouse because I've been keeping the screens closed. I don't think like a squirrel could have, even if a squirrel had gotten in here, could have done that kind of damage. So it was really weird. I figured maybe a lack of water, but I haven't really looked it up too much yet. The other corns they're hanging in there. They're not what I would say thriving, but they are hanging in there. And I do have a couple of ears on, like there's 2 good solid ears there, and some of the other plants are developing ears as well. So I'm hopeful, very hopeful. Still harvesting tomatoes from the tomato plants in here. I can see a couple of ripe ones there that I'll probably pull off probably tomorrow. So while I keep saying that it hasn't been the greatest tomato year, and it really hasn't, I think it's been better than it was for me last year, and I still am getting quite a number of tomatoes. My kitchen is getting kind of overrun with them until I figure out what I'm going to do with them. If I'm going to make tomato sauce or tomato paste or something like that. And some of them I've been eating fresh on sandwiches. And the cherry tomatoes, usually they don't even make it out of the garden. If there's 3 or 4 of them that are ripe, I usually just pop them in my mouth and eat them while I'm out here gardening, so they don't really last too long. But back to the greenhouse. Those 3 bags that I pulled out kind of were running down the middle here, and I think it did good to get those out regardless either way, because it'll allow for a little bit better airflow in here. It's kind of overly crowded. I think I overcrowded it, especially considering that I don't have a fan or any kind of ventilation in there other than, let me back up so you can see, other than the 2 doors stay open all the time just with that netting. And then up top, there is an open window vent up there that just stays open all the time. And the last thing that I think I have to show you, at least over here in the main garden, are some sunflowers. They kind of getting off to a late start too, but a couple of them are ready, getting ready to open. And I did have one, can't remember if this was blooming on my last garden tour, but I have had one flower, and I love that one little lonely petal still kind of hanging on there. So those are doing okay. And down the bottom I have some more calendula started and zinnias. And I had a couple of other sunflowers going here, but they too fell prey to the deer, just chomped right off the top. And I could see that the deer went through here. If I hadn't seen that, I would also know, because this overhanging tomato that's kind of coming out of its cage there, this is the honey drop. It also has signs of deer chomping. So yeah, next year I hope that I will not be having to report this same bad news out to you guys because we will have installed a fence. So it's going to be a DIY project, and with our jobs and every other thing we have going on, that's just why we haven't done this sooner. Here's another to show you guys, this melon plant. You can see where the deer kind of went to town on that. They didn't completely demolish this one though. They left a lot of flowers, but it's probably just a matter of time without some kind of barricade. So that's pretty much it in the garden over, here in the main garden. So that's pretty much it. That's the tour for this week, or at least for this couple of weeks. I'll probably keep doing the veggie garden tours throughout the growing season. They may not be every week, but maybe every 2 or every 3 weeks. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope your garden is doing really well. And until next time, bye.